So joining us now, Assistant Democratic Leader, Congressman Joe Neguse of Colorado. Congressman, good to see you this morning. The president, as we've talked about, seems to have declared war on Democratic cities. Your district, Denver, right there. You just heard from some at this table, including the Reverend Al Sharpton, suggest that Democrats have not mounted much of a defense, have not mounted much of an opposition to what President Trump is doing. How do you change that?
First and foremost, good to be with you. Look, I don't disagree clearly that the administration has created a culture of fear, and the parade of horribles, the lawless actions that the administration has taken are doing real damage to our republic. I would suggest to you that Democrats are certainly fighting back. You see that in Illinois, just by way of example, with respect to Governor Pritzker's actions in regards to the unlawful deployment of the National Guard into Chicago. By the way, you see that here in Washington, D.C. I'm here in Washington with my Democratic colleagues. Republicans are now on week 4 of their paid vacation. Speaker Johnson has unilaterally decided to refuse to reopen the House, notwithstanding that the government has now been shut down for 15 days. We are continuing to build pressure, and I guess I would caution folks, this goes back to a point that Joe was referencing a bit earlier. At the end of the day, part of what Donald Trump and his administration are attempting to do is to create this perception that he has all the power, and that ultimately sort of in some ways create a sense of hopelessness or helplessness in the American public. We've got to resist the temptation on that front. He is electorally unpopular. In fact, the most unpopular president at this juncture in his presidency than any modern president in the history of our country. I believe we're going to have a Democratic governor in the state of Virginia and the state of New Jersey in just a few short weeks when my colleagues, Mikey Sherrill and former colleague Abigail Spanberger, are elected chief executives of those respective states. So Democrats have got to continue to push, continue to fight back against the lawlessness, and I certainly, for one, will continue to do so.
And Congressman, 2 weeks ago, we didn't hear much from Republicans when it came to actual acknowledgement of the health care fights that you guys were mounting. But even in just the last days, the White House and several Republican lawmakers are now acknowledging that maybe something needs to be done about extending subsidies, that it's going to cost their own constituents too much money. What is your conversation looking like, though, with Republican lawmakers right now? Because there's, on one hand, you can fight, but on the other hand, is there an actual conversation that would lead you to believe that these things can happen in conjunction with one another?
Well, a couple things I'd say. First and foremost, you noted this, you articulated it well. Some of the Republicans are beginning to break ranks, and not just some Republicans, MAGA stalwarts. Marjorie Taylor Greene publicly saying that costs are going up across the board and criticizing the Speaker's procedural strategy in terms of keeping the House closed for 4 weeks and the substantive strategy in terms of these ACA credits expiring and healthcare costs ballooning across the country for everyday Americans. That, I think, is sending shockwaves through the MAGA ecosystem. It is very clear to me that the Republican members of Congress see the same polling data that every other American sees, which, as I mentioned, empirical data makes very clear the positions they're taking are very unpopular. So, one hopes that those conversations will metastasize and evolve over the course of the next few days so that we can get this resolved. But at the end of the day, let's also be clear. Republicans here in Washington, D.C. work for one person and one person only, and that is Donald Trump. So insofar as Donald Trump refuses to ultimately negotiate in good faith with Democrats, I don't see this ending here soon. But one hopes that he would finally see the writing on the wall and work with Democrats to reopen the government, address the health care crisis. That's certainly what I think we want to see done.
All right, Assistant Democratic Leader, Congressman Joe Neguse of Colorado, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. We appreciate it.